This is Joseph Anderson, CEO and founder of Connex. Years ago, I watched my mother lose her job after developing carpal tunnel from repetitive data entry work. And she was later had surgery, very painful surgery in her wrist, and later got let go. And that moment really struck with me. And I remember thinking there has to be a better way. That's what's inspired me to create Connex, a tool that automates e-commerce operations and helps businesses eliminate the kind of tedious manual work that burns people out. Today, I'm excited to be joined by someone who shares my same passion for helping people work smarter, Janet Lienhard. Janet's been in tech education for over 35 years, starting with WordPerfect. I haven't heard WordPerfect in years, Janet, and evolving into one of those go-to trainers for Microsoft tools, AI, and productivity systems. So I want to welcome Janet to our podcast. So thank you very much for joining our podcast, Janet.
Thanks, Joe.
And so in this episode, I want to talk about Janet's journey from the early days of software training to today's AI-driven tools. And I haven't used WordPerfect since I was in maybe high school. I bought this Dell computer and it didn't come with Office because it was expensive, but it came with WordPerfect, so it's been that long. And how companies can adopt the tools like Copilot and ChatGPT without getting overwhelmed. The biggest takeaways for growing tech teams trying to level up, and how her daily 60-second tech tips are changing the way that people learn. So let's jump in with those questions, Janet. Let's talk our first question. You've been in tech education for 35 years, starting with WordPerfect and transitioning into Microsoft training. Can you walk us through that journey, and what kind of learners were you working with, and how did their needs shape your approach?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll get my cane out because I've been doing this for a long time. So I was actually one of the first 10 certified WordPerfect instructors in the country. So what that meant was WordPerfect sent me a lot of business, and that was great getting started. Now, this was back in the DOS days when there weren't a lot of programs out there, and they didn't really have the new release for about 18 months. Now it's oh my goodness, trying to keep up with everything. But I've worked with everyone I've worked with the Navy SEALs, I've worked with Ritz-Carlton, I've worked with government agencies. The one that kind of stands out is, wow, I never thought of this one. I worked with a professional bird watcher. So a variety of different tools. And what that's done is it's helped me kind of hone my way of presenting material to all different levels. And I'm kind of known as somebody who's kind of the techie person that doesn't speak tech. So I speak regular English and try to simplify things down so that everybody can understand what's going on. Because if you look at some of the stuff out there, it can get kind of techie. It doesn't need to be. So make it nice and easy and fun.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of software documentation can be very difficult to understand. I write the software documentation for Connex around using our products, and I try to do videos and other such things. Even when, speaking of documentation, I actually go to ChatGPT and I'll say, how do I create an order with Sage Intacct, which is an accounting system that we support, and it's been able to give me a lot of the answers. Sometimes it's very hard to kind of look through all the documentation. So speaking of training and all this documentation, I'm sure you've seen a ton of it with Microsoft products and training. Did you include working with software developers like me or IT teams? And what kind of professionals have you found benefit most from your programs?
It's interesting. Just about everyone, because we can go from beginner and make sure they have a really good basic foundation. But my background is I actually am a self-taught Visual Basic programmer, PHP programmer. I developed my own registration site back in the day before I found some of these more automated tools, which are much nicer. I don't have to deal with all the security things. Pretty much any level, and that's what I love doing. I love working with people at different levels and making sure they understand how to use the tools for whatever they happen to need it for. When it comes to dealing with AI and the technical things, here's a little tip that I found is helpful. I ask it to explain it to me at a 5th grade level, but for adults. Because if I don't throw in but for adults, it gets kind of crazy. But that has really helped when I have to do major research or learn a new program or things like that.
Yeah, I've never thought about asking ChatGPT to explain complicated technical concepts to a 5th grader. I'll have to give that a try sometime.
It's really helpful, but make sure you say for adults. Otherwise, it gets kind of crazy.
I'll definitely give that a try sometime. So now you're a certified VGL AI trainer, and you work with tools like Copilot and ChatGPT. Where do you see AI making the biggest impacts in areas like software development, the customer journey, customer success, or even internal team management?
Oh my goodness. pretty much everywhere. It's amazing, but you have to learn how to use it properly and be aware of security issues and privacy and things like that. When it comes to working with software developers or with myself, I'm doing a lot with Microsoft's Power Automate and Copilot Studio and things like that. The documentation that's out on the internet is typically behind what the latest versions are that you might be working with, right? So what I have found that's been very helpful is when I'm working with ChatGPT or Copilot is I'll be working on something and then I'll take a screen capture of what I have. And then I will upload it and I'll say, okay, this is what I have. Now, what's the next step? And a lot of times I'll just say chat from now on, as I'll say I'm working with chat. So chat and I will be discussing things because sometimes chat will be looking at older documentation and then based on what I've uploaded, chat starts to get an idea and we start working together. And it's really helped with troubleshooting and dramatically speeding up the results. And then when I'm working with different departments and individuals within a company, taking a look at what their needs are and then describing it. And one thing I found that works really well, especially with a team that's trying to figure out how they want to use any of these AI tools, is to go in and kind of just give it a wish list. Say, okay, this is what I want. This is what I currently have. This is where I'd like to go. I don't want to do this. I do want to do that. And that starts to really kind of identify really good steps on how to approach the different projects or questions or concerns, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it sounds like with your AI, you have to know the different kinds of people that want to use it, as well as, do you want to explain it, like you said, to a fifth grader or to an adult? So it's definitely good that you can kind of customize the AI in that way. Now, speaking of these different systems, I heard from my staff that you send out these amazing 60-second tech tip emails every day. And what inspired you to go with this bite-sized learning? And how has this format changed tech training?
That's interesting. Yeah, so I was challenged by some of my different mentor groups that I belong to send something out on a daily basis for a year. And I thought, what on earth am I going to talk about for a year? And then I thought, well, I know Microsoft, I know software. And so Microsoft is pretty much, those tools are the ones I really focus on now because most of my clients, the majority of the Fortune 500 and, other businesses are primarily in the Microsoft world. So I thought, well, okay, I'll stay on Microsoft. But then I recognize that there are a lot of Mac users out there, and it's a little bit different to use 365 on a Mac than it is on a PC. So I decided to do these 60-second shortcut videos, and I always do a Mac version as well as a PC version. And then people have signed up to get this daily email from me. And then on Sundays, I give them a recap so they can just sit and have their cup of coffee and watch the different videos that went out during the week. But people seem to love them and they're short to the point. And I think nowadays we don't have that long of a attention span for heavy duty tech stuff. So this is just enough. It's not designed for beginners. It's designed for people that work in it kind of on a daily, weekly basis. And they just don't know what they don't know. That's the purpose of those little shortcuts. And that's how I got started doing them.
Yeah, I agree with shorter content, 60 seconds. People sometimes lose their attention span, so it's good to have like shorter videos. Even YouTube, they have those kind of clips that I often see myself watching. Are you a PC or Mac person?
Well, I'm primarily a PC, but I do have a Mac. So I work in both. So it depends on who I'm working with. But yes, I will say I would prefer my PC is the main one I work on. Yeah.
So speaking of PCs and Macs, you mentioned you train users on both computers. What are some of the differences in how people learn on a PC or a Mac? And are there any specific gotchas you find? What you're always explaining?
That's interesting. Overall, it's the same, especially when I'm talking about the Microsoft products, right? But there are things that are different. So it is a bit of a challenge when I'm teaching because I do primarily virtual courses online. And so when I'm teaching a virtual course that half are Mac and half are PC users, that's a tad challenging. But at the same time, it's a good way to kind of show people that, let's say you're working on a Mac and you find yourself on a PC or vice versa. It's doable. So they understand, I can get it done. It might not be exactly the same, but most likely that feature is going to be there.
Now, I know PCs have Copilot, but do Mac computers have like a ChatGPT plugin or not yet?
Yeah, they also have a Copilot. In fact, I just downloaded the Copilot for the desktop for Mac today.
Is it from
So
Microsoft or Apple?
it's on my Mac. So, but what you would do is if you're on the Mac, you would go to copilot.microsoft.com to go to that site. And when you sign in to go to copilot.microsoft.com, sounds like I'm a salesperson, but when you do that, you're going to sign in with your work or school account. So we're going to say work account. So whether you're on a Mac or a PC, you're signing into the work account. And once you're in there, you're in that more secure environment because that's tied to your business, the whole business account. Now, we're not talking personal accounts. We're talking an account that the business has. And so it has access to all the files that you have access to. And it also can understand a lot of the things that you're working on. But with Copilot, I don't know if you're aware of this, you have to actually purchase extra Microsoft 365 Copilot to have it actually show up in your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, that sort of thing. And then that takes it to another level where it's, again, has access to all of your information. It's more secure because it's within your whole, Microsoft, sorry to get techie, tenant area environment.
So if you had, let's say, Copilot on Microsoft, could you say to like rewrite a paragraph or do grammar
Absolutely.
check on this?
Yeah, you can work with it a lot of different ways. Now, I will be honest, I use ChatGPT as well, and there are different versions of chat. Sounds like we might talk about that in a little bit, but you need to make sure that in the chat area that you've turned off, if you're not on the enterprise version, that you turn off the learn mode. You don't want to train the ChatGPT model. You want to keep your stuff secure. And then sometimes I will get the answer I want from chat. Sometimes I'll get it from Copilot. Sometimes I kind of have to work between the two of them.
So if I kept, for example, let's say I asked ChatGPT a technical question about syncing data to an accounting system, and it was correct, I could say like good answer to it.
Yeah, or I'll say, yeah, this is great, and then I'll just continue on. So a lot of times when I'm working with and showing people how to use AI properly, I say, think of this as an intern or a new employee or a consultant that you've brought into the business that doesn't really know everything, right? So you have to kind of teach it. So that's no matter which AI program you're in, you've got to train it on what you're doing, kind of your voice, what things you're working on, that sort of thing. And the more you work with it, just like the more you work with an intern, a new employee, or a consultant to teach them what sorts of things you need them to do, the better results you're going to get. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. I know it has models. I'm always curious how the system learns, but I used to use a site called stackoverflow.com to answer a ton of questions. I'd be like, I have this error message, I'd paste it into Google, I'd be like, and then go through all the solutions and then I rinse, wash, repeat. But it's good to know ChatGPT. I'm like, wow, I wouldn't even know where to look for that answer. It seems to have information, more things that I never knew about on there. So that's really great.
Yes, I used to use Stack Overflow all the time. And now I'm like, are you kidding me? Now I can just go say, can you write some code for me? With any of these things, just like if you hired somebody, if you don't know anything about what you're talking about, you're not going to know if you're getting correct answers, right? So you do have to have the background enough to be able to say, no, you're kind of off target here, or where did you come up with that? That is not true. Because remember, it's trained off of everything on the internet, and not everything on the internet is accurate. So you have to be aware of that.
A lot of wrong answers on some of these sites.
Exactly.
And so we're all on the subject of ChatGPT. How do you explain the differences between like the various tier levels? Like I'm not a subscriber. I just started using it myself. But free plus enterprise, like what's worth the upgrade? What would I get with an enterprise plan of ChatGPT?
So that if you're not a business purchasing, so we're going to talk about more individuals purchasing, there's the free version. Then there's the one that's $20 a month. And I actually just asked Chat this morning to make sure I had the latest upgrade or date information. So the plus is $20 a month. And then there is the Pro, which is one I have, which is $200 a month. So those are not secure in that by default, it's turned on to train the ChatGPT model. Now, the free one, you don't have the ability to turn that off, but the Plus, which is a $20, and the Pro, which is a $200, you can actually go into settings and say, don't train the model. So I highly recommend doing that. And now with the free version, you're somewhat limited and you don't have all the tools, and it's kind of on the earlier version of the ChatGPT model. Then the Plus and the Pro, they have the newer versions available. The Pro is a $200 one. That's what I'm on. you pretty much have unlimited time that you're working in it. And they have something called deep research, which I don't know if you've used that yet. It's phenomenal. So the other day I was actually I was at a conference and I had a meeting set up with a company, and it was kind of a last minute. I saw that I had this 15-minute meeting, and it was the morning before the meeting. So I was like, okay, I want to do some research on this person. So I put into chat for deep research. I said, okay, this is a person I'm meeting. Here's information I know. Here's the company. You know all about me and what I do. And I turned on deep research. Then I went, brushed my teeth, did my hair, got my makeup done, came back. 15 minutes later, I had this amazing information about the company, the person I was meeting, and great little tips on how to talk to that company for what I wanted to discuss. And then I was full disclosure to the person I met, and I said, by the way, I did deep research on you. Didn't know about that. They were so impressed.
It sounds like this enterprise plan has access to like more models, more data than the free plan.
That's the pro plan. So now there's team and enterprise, which is for businesses. And then that is secure. That's in its like own little platform. You don't have to worry about training the model. But that's for businesses. So it's kind of confusing. There's the one for individuals, which is free, $20 a month, $200. The $200 is called Pro. And then there's a version for businesses. So that would be 2 or more people in the business. So then they have a Teams version and the enterprise version. Was that clear?
Yeah, that's good to know. I'll have to take a look at doing higher versions. It saved me so much time. Things that would take me a lot of like questions and answers that would take me long to find on the internet. I've been able to find, like, if I Google, like I was working with a company called Sage Intacct, big accounting software, and I'm trying to create orders, and I ask it, I'm like, how do I do this? And it gives me like, really good code. I'm like, well, okay. Or troubleshooting certain kinds of errors, and it would have taken me really hard on Stack Overflow to find those answers.
Yes.
Even documentation that wouldn't come up on a normal search. So it's definitely been really helpful. Now let's changing gears. You've been a longtime member of WBEC West, and how has that network helped you grow your business? And what do you think that these supplier diversity programs do to empower women entrepreneurs in tech?
So WBEC West, WBEC West, is a portion, or it's called a regional partner organization. The bigger umbrella is WeBank, which is Women Business Enterprise National Council. So basically, they certify that your business is 51% owned and run by a woman. So that's where, in the supplier diversity world, which is now getting kind of renamed a bit, but it's still around, they basically recognize the women-owned businesses. There's national minority supplier diversity, service disabled vets, and LGBTQ. So I'm part of the WeBank, or the Women Business Enterprise. And I just got back from the national conference. So on Sunday, there was a day with what's called We Connect, which is the international version of the women certification. And then we had 4 days with the corporations in the WeBank portion of it. And it's been great with networking, not only with other small business owners, but also with corporations. And it's kind of hard to get noticed and get your foot in the door with some of these larger corporations because they're used to working with larger companies. But as smaller businesses, whether you're a certified business or not, a smaller business is more agile. We can pivot when necessary very quickly, sometimes within 24 hours. So having that ability to work with a company that is on the latest, cutting edge type information that can bring a different perspective is real helpful. So what this organization does is it helps us to get to know the diversity representatives who are tasked within the company to go out and look for different types of businesses. And sometimes, like with me, sometimes I'll meet with a company that has a diversity representative, and they weren't specifically looking for what I do, but as they start to get to know me, then as they go back and talk to people within their organization, and they're like, oh, wait, I know somebody who might be able to do that. So between helping other small businesses and also trying to get your foot in the door with the bigger businesses.
Let's say it sounds like this is a great organization to grow your business,
yes,
as well as meet new people, and just kind of get the word out about what you do. It sounds like they can give you feedback too on what kind of products and services you should offer and how you do like the marketing.
Exactly, exactly. And the thing is, you build relationships. So you're not going to, most likely, unless you're a unicorn, you don't go in and get a big contract right away, right? But you, just like anything, you do business with who you know, like, and trust. So it's like a way of getting people to know you and understand that you've been around, you're going to be around, and understand your unique features and tools and products that you offer.
Well, I've really had a enjoyable time interviewing you, discussing your very interesting business about how you train businesses on Copilot. I really enjoyed talking to you about ChatGPT. I didn't know there was more than one level. I was always curious how ChatGPT made money because they don't have the paid ads. I actually like ChatGPT because like I go to Google and I'll search for something and like, yeah, here's 6 sponsored listings and I got to keep scrolling down. But it's good to know that like ChatGPT, you can just pay them on a monthly or even annual basis. My last question, and this is more of an opinion, do you think ChatGPT is going to have paid ads or it'll just be like a monthly annual subscription?
Oh, that's interesting. I see it more of a subscription model. I don't think they really need to advertise much. Yeah, I would say they'd probably stay more of the subscription model. And one other thing, if you are in the $20 a month or the 200, you have projects, which is kind of like if you have folders on your system, your computer, and they have subfolders. Well, you can create folders or projects for different clients, different projects, different whatever it is you want. So you can organize your chats. That saves a lot of time as well.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the tips about ChatGPT. I learned so many, new things. That will be the end of, today's podcast. Janet, I want to thank you very much for joining me and just teaching me all about your very interesting business.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll perhaps run into each other at a networking event or perhaps on some other podcast soon.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Take it easy.